everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai.
In the sense that I have a branch that splits into two shoots in here, so I'm probably going to cut this thing off right about here this fall. I've taken my knob cutter and I've gotten rid of some of that. So I just put them on the bottom, growing upwards into the bag. We fill it up with trees and then we water as we need to. We try to get rid of those air pockets.
Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. From the photographs before the intro, you probably noticed some pretty leaves and some fall decorations, Halloween around the corner. It was a beautiful day just a couple of days ago. And then on Friday morning, a couple days after the first pictures you saw, I was out there watering some bonsai trees and this happened. Now, a little snow on the 18th of October isn't that big of a deal. We are from Minnesota, of course, and even with climate change and all the crazy weather events that have been happening across the country, across the world, across the globe, you know, a few snowflakes. It was pretty, right? If you're optimistic, glass half full kind of person, it was a pretty snowfall. And it, you know, brightened up the trees a little bit, gave it some, well, free watering. And probably better quality than the water that I was giving the trees from the hose. But with snow happening and a forecast that I've always paid attention to, well, I had to get to work. The snow's on the umbrella. My garage is a bit of a mess. Knowing the temperatures were going to be hovering into the low 20s, I took it upon myself to bring some of the trees inside the garage. So right now, I've got all the yard furniture in the garage. We bagged our 15 plus bags of leaves, which are protecting the trees in the back. I cleaned out my bonsai cold frame from the garage a couple of weeks ago and left the doors open for everything to dry out. But now the garage is absolutely full of trees everywhere, clinging on before we get to the nasty, nasty cold weather. Some of these I still plan to work on a little bit. We'll see if that happens. I was able to get my sensitive trees inside the garage there, as you saw. So all the ones that are going to be going into cold frames were safe in my messy garage. I had to take all of my furniture and put it in there. You saw the mess. And that took me from the end of dinner time until it was dark outside, and it was nonstop for an hour and a half or so. Then, the forecast from the weather folks turned out to be true. Even though I got all my trees in the protected area of the old vegetable garden, this guy has to go inside the cabin. When this freezes tonight, my door will be frozen shut, so I'm going to have to shovel all this out at the end of the snowstorm. We're going to have to put some saran wrap on that guy and get him inside the cabin in the next few days. I was hoping to wait till the weekend, but Tuesday, October 20th, had a different idea. Snow, and yeah, you saw it, a lot of snow. My dilemma with the snow was a couple of nights, or the night before the snow, I didn't get my trees into the pattern that I wanted to get them into. You see, because what I learned last year, and I rewatched this year, was an episode from Ryan Neal over there, Bonsai Mirai, about winter care. And one of the things that he recommended in that episode was taking your trees, and when you put them all together to help bring them together and be protected from that wind, you want to put all the pine trees on the outside. You want the pine trees with the real thick cuticles. Those pine trees have the thickest, strongest, waxy cuticle surface, right, with all that foliage, and that helps to block and take some of that wind away from the real sensitive deciduous trees that are all bare from foliage, and then some of the junipers and those kind of trees. So you want the pines on the outside, but I don't have a ton of pines, and I just kind of put them in there real quickly because the snow came. So let's see how I did. What in the world happened? Yeah, that. Snow. Lots of it. So the official at the airport for October the 20th of 2020 was 7.4 inches of snow. I think it's the second all-time high, second only to the Halloween blizzard of 91 for those of you that are from the Minnesota area and dealt with that 28 inches over a course of 24 hours. So second place all time for October. Earliest 3+, 4+, 6+ snowfall. We love breaking records in Minnesota, don't we? The nice thing about the snowfall is all the trees that are outside have a nice blanket of moisture. And that's going to slowly release now into the pot. I still have to get this in here though. But before the snow fell, I was able to get the windows on. I was able to put the door on. And we've got a couple plants inside with the Go-V thermometer in there. Let's go check that out. Well, here we are inside the cabin cold frame. We got a couple of trees up on top right now, and I've got these cuttings that I don't want to freeze solid and ruin the tender little roots, if there are roots there, from some of my Taxus plants. We've got the Sabina juniper in here right now, and some more cuttings. We've got some Kishu, or Kisha, I forget how to pronounce that, the juniper, Shimpaku, one of the varieties of the Shimpaku juniper. Also cuttings that will be kept here in the thermostatic registered heat source right there, set at about 38 degrees. And we have our Go-V, remember the Go-V. So right now we're at about 40 degrees, 75% relative humidity, 76%, and that's being sent to my cell phone so I know at all times how things are going here in the cabin cold frame. And let's not forget, off to my right, up or left, right there, we've got the fan that's now on for 20 minutes a day, or 20 minutes an hour, 24 hours a day. So it's helping to circulate the air in this cabin cold frame, so we make sure that we keep the air from being too stagnant and possibly create some interesting dynamics with mold or mildew or funguses and that kind of deal. And there's the heater right now. I'll have a lot more trees in here to come. Right now they're in the garage. Yeah, they're in the garage because I had to do a quick triage and get the trees inside the house for fear they were going to all be frozen solid to the ground. It's really important in your cold frames to have good, easy access. So I got to keep all the snow cleared from here and the ice. This door is just fits right in, fits right out, so we can get in there and check our trees. If you have a cold frame that's not easily accessed, you're just going to have a mess, and you're not going to check your trees as often, and you will have trouble. I was just watching another episode from Ryan Neal over there on the other coast, or on one of the coasts. I'm kind of in the middle here in Minnesota, and talking about winter care. And we always have to remember that our trees dry out, and our trees still need watering, and people lose more trees in the winter, and because of winter lack of good care, than almost any other reason. So make sure you're checking your trees often, and depending upon where you are in the cold frame and the humidity and how much you're watering, you may have to check and water your trees, some of the trees, some of the species, again based on all these other factors, as much as every week. Sometimes I go as long as 2 weeks without watering in the middle of the dry winter, but that's when it's really dry, and so things are going to still dry out. It's protected in here from the wind and most of the sun, but your plants are still going to dry out, so don't forget about that. So speaking of drying out, we have to go visit the vegetable garden, because the vegetable garden, before all this snow fell about 3 weeks ago, I was starting to prepare it for a wind guard and needing to put my trees in there for storage and keep them away from the critters. Let's go see what happened to that with this snowstorm. The night before it snowed, I was able to get all my trees off the benches, and they're either in the garage or they're out here because they're going to stay out here, and I don't believe I'm going to be working on them anymore. Although that's not entirely true. After watching some more stuff with Ryan Neal and talking with some other members of the Minnesota Bonsai Society, I actually can do a little bit of work on some of these yet. My larches, some of them, still are green. And I just watched another video with Ryan Neal where he was working on a larch after all the leaves were gone, and it was actually late in the season, and you can bring it back in your workshop and do some pruning of the larch, put it back in the cold frame or back outside on the benches if you're out there in the Northwest, and you're not going to be having too much problem with that tree as far as damage or dieback or problems in the spring. So here are all the trees. Let's give you an up close and personal look. The barrier of leaf bags with the tarp covering it to keep them a little bit more dry from all the snow. Beautiful wall. It's going to protect some of that wind. Then we have all the plants on the inside. Now you're seeing a big smorgasbord of plants here. And if I had more of a certain species, I would have them on the outside, and then I'd have different species on the inside. And the general rule of thumb, and again, something I have relearned and rewatched real recently with Ryan Neal, when you talk about winter care and protecting from the wind and the sun, especially from the wind, we want to typically have the bonsai with the broader leaf, or I should say the better, stronger cuticle to support damaging winds, and that's going to be our pines. So we got small pine needles, but they're very the firm cuticle on a pine. Those pine boughs with all the green foliage is going to protect as the outside layer. So we typically want to have our deciduous trees on the inside. So my Minnesota forest down there is right in the middle, and it's buried pretty well. My white paper birch forest is also right in the middle, but it's so tall, yeah, the barrier is not going to do much for those top branches, is it? I have some pines around the edges and the back, so we have a little bit of pine action in there, and not very many pines though, so they're on the edges a little bit, but I don't have enough to really surround my trees with pines. There's one sticking up right there, a little bit of pine action there. So I got my tamaracks all around the edges, and I've got some other deciduous trees inside, in and around. I got some cotoneasters in there in the nursery pot still. We've got some willows in the back over there. Yeah, a little bit of everything. But because I don't have a lot of pines, they're in there. The barrier is up and strong right there, and it's going to block most of that wind from the lower levels. We've got a nice blanket of snow right now, and we're supposed to get rain tomorrow, maybe a 1/4 inch of rain. So most of this could be sparkling and wet and no longer white, but I'll believe that when I see it. Temps today hovered in the mid-30s, and so all of this snow is still sticking around. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, and we're going to have to work on getting that maple in there in the next couple of days as well. But I'm going to wait for more snow to melt, and then we'll try to get that thing in there and make sure we show you that. All in all, I was able to take care of my trees as best I could with the situation. There's a member of the Minnesota Bonsai Society that always tells us to be ready to have our trees in the cold frames and ready to go by Halloween. As I record this right now, it is now the 21st of October, the day after the storm. And we're not even close to Halloween, another 10 days away, and look what happened. So we really have to pay attention to weather. We're always looking at our trees. We're always paying attention so we can take the best care and not be caught off guard. And this year, whoa, a lot of people in the Minnesota Bonsai Society on our Facebook chat were talking about starting that bonsai shuffle, right? And do I bring trees in? Do I leave them out? Some people are regretting leaving theirs out, but they sure made for some really pretty pictures. Great to see bonsai with snow cover on there. So the trees are where they need to be, and we can make some minor adjustments between now and middle of November. The snow is here for a while. I don't think it's going to completely melt. We're going to have a lot of cold temperatures in the next week or so. We could get a warm spell, but the trees are where they need to be, so I'm okay with that. But the cold frames are not set up yet. So I'm going to take just a nano of a break here in the editing process and wait a couple of days, and I'm going to get that maple into the cabin cold frame and then situate all the trees around there. I'll show some of that, and then I'm going to put all those trees that are left inside the garage cold frame, and I'll show you some of that. So I need a couple of days to get that organized, but for you it'll be just a little click. So in the meantime, for a little bit of a break, maybe a couple more pictures of that beautiful snow. Yeah, there's a nice layer of ice. The ponds have frozen over. Last night's low temperature was about 24 degrees. So the ponds are ice, and all the trees that are in the garage are doing fine. I even put a heater in the garage last night because I thought we were supposed to get in the teens, and I still have a couple of sensitive plants that aren't as protected as I'd like. Again, one of the many back and forths we have this time of year to try to make sure that our trees are as safe as possible. My biggest concern is this guy. So it didn't get down to the teens, it got to about 24, and this guy's in a pretty big pot, and all the snow that fell onto it is now nice and firm on top. It's giving it a little bit of insulation for down below. So hopefully we don't have too many damaged root tips from this cold evening. We will find out in the spring and next year. But I have a potential positive from the snow. Glass half full kind of guy, I hope that I am. Try to be. This is kind of frozen in here right now. So I was going to have to saran wrap all of this, so when I tipped it into the cold frame here, all my soil wouldn't fall out. So now either this is going to fall out, or we're going to be just fine. I don't have to worry about saran wrapping. So let's get right to it. My door's open. I'm ready to bring it inside. Of course, one of the biggest problems with this tree is its size. So once I get it in here, it's not going to be as easy for me to move around, and then I've got to put more plants in here from the garage ready for this cold frame. Even though the temps in the coming weeks are supposed to go back into the upper 40s and possibly some 50s in the first week of November, that's awesome for us humans. And it's not so bad for the trees either, but the lows at night are still cold. So it's cold frame for the rest of the season. So we got to get going. So let's see if all our measurements stayed true. Earlier in the video, from part one, you saw that we created this to make it fit. So it's probably frozen to the ground here. And it is. All right. Legs are always stronger than your arms, so don't hurt your back. So this was the direction. Now we got to do some tipping and see if we can get this thing in here. So far, so good. I'm losing space inside. Got to move to stand-up position. Well, there we go. Let's bring the camera in here and give you a look. So here's a look from the outside of the window. I removed the portable temporary window that I have in there so you guys can see inside. So this is the task in front of me today. The cabin cold frame is pretty well set up. We had the fan up earlier. We have the thermostat regulated heat source. I've got my fan going off 20 minutes an hour, 24/7. I've got some trees up there in the top already. We just have to make this so it all fits. Now there's a couple things I have to keep in mind. I'm going to be in here in real tight quarters with my juice bottles that have water in there. That's room temperature. Temperature in here, it's going to be about 40 degrees. Won't freeze. Also helps regulate that heat in your cabin. So if you have more water in here, it's going to help regulate that heat. So when I go in to squeeze these, I'm going to go like that and squeeze some water on these trees. Just like that. And so, depending upon how narrow the holes are in my juice containers, how good of an aim I am, how close I get to the plant so I'm more accurate, you know, I might make a little mess in here. Which is why we stained it earlier, get a little bit more protection. But the other thing is I have some of these cords kind of dangling around. So my next job is to try to find a way that these cords are going to kind of stay permanent. I'm going to kind of wrap them up so they're kind of tucked away. And then I want to make sure that all these conjunctions here, all these junctions of power are where they need to be. And protected from the water. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap some plastic bags around them of some sort so the water doesn't get into the electric unit source and cause problems. So, time to get to work and move things around so we can get the fit. The tree fits in here nice. I still have a good foot to spare to the peak of the cabin, but this is still a beast of a tree, and this snow is going to slowly start to melt today as we're in the cold frame, which is heated and right now at about 38 degrees. And that'll slowly water this tree, and this tree will be good for probably several weeks. At least 1 week, I would imagine, before temps get too warm again. So time to rearrange some trees and protect my cords. After inspecting the inside a little bit, I've got the fan that's powered, and the cord goes down there, and it comes back on this shelf, and it goes to my main power unit, right there. I've got a 3-way plug adapter, which plugs into the thermostat regulated heat source. And so I'm going to take this right here, and I want to hang it from up here. So it just kind of dangles in here so it's away from the water. No trees are right here right now, and if it's high enough here, most of my trees will be down here on this first bench right here, and so I'll water down lower, not up top. And then there's some trees up top. There'll be trees on this bench and over to the side. So I think I'm going to put a couple of screws up there towards the top and dangle this cord down here, and then this cord can loop on a couple of screws that go up there, and we'll have ourselves a nice little dangly cord that's away from the water. And then we will get some kind of a baggie or something to put over that just to protect it from moisture when it does get humid in here, and in case, of course, I get a little wild with my watering. So let's get those screws up. With the cord going up there, it's just going to dangle right there. That cord follows the wall into the corner, goes up to the top corner to supply the energy to the fan. None of that is in the way of any watering on the top. And then we'll protect this with some kind of plastic shield. And then this cord comes down here and goes into my heater, which will be pushed out more to the floor or just on the edge of this bench if that ends up being the right spot for it. But that's a little too close to my trees if I have trees on the bench, so we'll put it on the floor. So find some plastic and start bringing some trees in. Wasn't able to find any plastic laying around in the garage. I must have used it all on other projects. So a good old trusty trash bag with a little duct tape, and we'll be able to get the same results. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this around the cord a little bit, secure it up on top where it's loose on the bottom so I can still have access, and then we won't have to worry about so much moisture, at least getting into the power for many of my wild waterings throughout the winter. Another one thing I want to point out too that's really nice, one of the great things about working in my cold frame during the day right now with the windows and doors open is that I can see if the thermostat regulated power source is going on and off. And it has gone off once today. The cabin cold frame right now is reportedly 36 degrees. And so my thermostat regulation is not kicking in. So I might have it down about 34, 35, maybe 33 before that heat kicks in. So It's in good shape right now. We'll see if it kicks in as it gets colder. Although the day should be getting a little bit warmer, and it might be close to 30 outside, so this temperature isn't going to fluctuate too much, especially with me working in here and getting a little body heat. But it's good to be out here during this time to see if it does in fact kick in, and when it does. So awesome to see that that's working. Okay, let's do some wrapping. And there you have it. As I'm looking to find the end of the duct tape, the click of the heater goes on, and we're still at 36 degrees. So that tells me that the thermostat's working, which is good. And the temperature over there by the thermostat might be a little bit warmer, a little bit cooler than where the actual thermometer is here, right? My little Govee. So it's good to know that it's working as I work on my beautiful wrap job here with some duct tape. Remember, if you can't fix it with duct tape, it's probably not worth fixing, right? I don't know, something like that. Or you can't fix it if you can't fix it with duct tape. And I don't know if it'll stick to the wood or not, but let's give it a go. I can just go ahead and just kind of have a little bit of security here with this guy right here in the cabin cold frame. So that's dangling from there. I got a tree I'm going to move here, my Sabina juniper. And we're going to move this over here, and we're going to tape this up a little bit more. A piece of tape anyway that I can always undo. Of course, duct tape, garbage bags, I'm not going to be able to do that, so I better do it up a little bit higher. And I wrap it around in the back here to keep this top part on a little bit better. Alright, and then what I can do with this bottom piece to make sure it stays together is get a good old-fashioned clothesline clip, and I'll clip this right here. So any water that sprays towards the bag now is going to spray towards the bottom. It's going to drip down. It's not going to get into my power source. Okay, my heater's still on. The fan's about ready to kick on in the next 5 to 10 minutes. We'll see if that's still working. And while that's doing that, let's go get a paper clip or a clip of sorts and start bringing down a few plants to organize my cabin cold frame. So I have a couple of new Shimpaku junipers that I recently worked at a workshop. And so I've got one right there. I've got my Hinoki cypress, and I've got my Satsuki azalea in here. Down there I've got my new Trident maple, and as you can see it's got a good fall chop to it right there. With the Trident maples, we're able to make some severe chops this time of year. Well, this was made about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And then I've got the other Shimpaku juniper back over there. So great, they all fit in here pretty nice and easily right now, but I've got a load of plants to add in here as well. So I'm going to bring a couple more plants down here, move things around. I have to get around this big beast, of course, the maple, and make things start to fit. This is the cold frame that I'd like to have some of my more important trees in because I know the temperature stays very regulated in here. And I also have some lighting with the windows. There's one window over there that provides some lighting, and then I'm shooting through the other window. And so that provides a little bit of light for the trees as well. Now there's a lot of debate out there over whether you need light at all in the cold frame or do you go to pitch black. I'm still not an expert in this by any stretch, but this cold frame gets light, my other one does not, so it's been good to do some experimenting and just see how the trees come out. Both my cold frames seem to be performing well. The trees that are performing well when they leave the cold frame. I did notice that my quince leafed out earlier this last spring in here, and maybe it's due to because of the sun. So you just, again, have to always watch your trees and take care of them and make sure that you know what to do with them when. Take a peek at them and monitor. So let's go grab some more trees. This process will take a little while, so in just a click I'll be back, but let's do some organizing. The view from the outside window. So underneath there are all my cuttings. So I have a whole bunch of cuttings underneath there, and I can reach a bottle under there and get some moisture in there as needed. Kind of the most cumbersome part of the cold frame. But last year I had that shelf turned around and that was all wasted space. So now I'm getting some of those
extra room for some trees. I got the tree still up on top here. The heater's still sitting there. That'll move to the floor when this moves over to the side. And I've got another pot over there with a juniper. And mainly that juniper could be outside, but I have it in a pot that is not Minnesota cold hardy, so it might crack and chip. And I got my Chinese elm over there, root over rock. That's starting to take a spot over there. Let's see if we can creep inside and get a little closer. So as you can see, I have the plants that are up there. I got a boxwood up there, and I got a quince up there. I got a rhododendron up there. And there are my nice junipers tucked in the corner. I've got this juniper in a Sarah Rayner pot. And though Sarah Rayner fires her pots at a high temperature and usually good for Minnesota hardy trees, she's out of Red Wing, Minnesota, there's a little bit of a lip on that pot, and I've always made sure that I put that in the cold frame just to be extra safe. There's my root over rock. This one I want to make sure is in here as well. Nice and easy access, and make sure it's at a good temperature. My other cold frame is a little bit smaller, so it's harder for me to get at some things. I got those all those cuttings underneath there. So I'm filling up fast. And my last dilemma is, because I always love going to Gerton's and buying some cheap bonsai material, I got all these cotoneasters. Cotoneasters were about, I think, were they $7? I don't remember. It's probably on the label there. So the cotoneasters didn't get into a pot, of course, because I got them late in the season. I'll repot in the spring. I got 7 of these guys, but look at how bushy they are. Now, with a lot of species, including our Japanese maples and our larches, and I hope the cotoneaster, I'm just going to cut some of these tips off so it's not quite so bulky in here and hard for me to move around, because I've got 4 or 5 of them to put in here as the last step to make sure that they are going to be protected for this winter. So cotoneasters usually as a shrub in Minnesota, beautiful red color in this one. This is kind of like a fireball cotoneaster, or a fire, I forget the name of this one. The Autumn Inferno. Yeah, so look at those colors. Got the berries on there right now. So we'll trim this up a little bit. Got my my cutters, and we'll make a few cuts on here on these tips, so we can just make a little more room and shouldn't create too much harm for next season. Most of everything now at this time of year, with what we've had for weather and the cold temperatures, and as it slowly got colder and colder, these trees have gotten ready for dormancy. And when we cut trees like a Japanese maple, the tridents this time of year, and these cotoneasters, which I don't know as much about, but I'm hoping are very similar, they're not going to bleed when you cut them this time of year. So we're going to cut them. All the energy has been stored already in all the branches and the vascular system inside, all top to bottom, roots and trunk and branches. So we're just going to do some light trims on top. Nothing major with these cotoneasters. I'm just going to make them so they fit better, and then we'll hope for the best in the spring. So a little more maneuvering. Looking pretty good in here. I can still move in here a little bit, but we still got to make some moves. So we'll cut these and see what our final storage looks like. We have some cotoneasters right in front of the camera, right by the door. The heater's kind of right down there in the middle. Got some space before the trees start. Got the big old maple with the snow still on there. Not really melting too fast yet. We got the bench back there all full, some in the corner, some underneath. We got some way up top, up there, and then a couple cotoneasters up here. So we're set. One of the things I want to make note of is the maple. I took all the leaves off the maple, and I also put a Japanese maple right there on the right corner of that back bench. And I defoliated all those because the leaves were close to falling off, all shriveled up, getting brown. And sometimes you can pull lightly and get those leaves off, but you don't want to dam that where the new buds are going to come out, right at that internode section. So I went ahead with the scissors and I cut all the dark purple leaves off the maple, and I got the Japanese maple back there on the bench all cut up as well. What we don't want to have is a whole bunch of broadleaf deciduous leaves just all over the floor, where there's going to be possibility of more mold with the water that drips down and leaks out of the pots. And we're not going to cover these with mulch like the ones outside. So in this cold frame, we're set up. We're going to close up the windows, close up the door, and I'm going to monitor this very closely for the next week.
I'm going to monitor it all winter long, but for the first week, I just want to make sure the temperatures are where they're supposed to be. I've given most of the plants in here a good watering, so they are ready to go and sit in the cold frame. So there's the cabin cold frame. Part one of this last part, two, is done. Now we have to go in the garage and see if the rest of my plants will fit in that cold frame. My garage is still a mess, but we have to go check it out. So there's the cold cabin frame plant design, and let's hope that this works out for us this year. So the garage is an absolute mess because of the sudden onslaught of cold weather and the snow. And so my furniture, the snowblower, all this stuff was in the garage, but I had to take it out of the garage to give me some room to actually move and work on the cold frame. So there's the cold frame that we got to fill up today. And the heater's already on, which means the thermostat regulated power source, which is down there on the ground, is working. It's saying, hey, it's cold, let's turn this thing on. So that's good to know. And then there's the garage with all kinds of trees peppered back in there. I got about 15 to 20 to fit in there. 15 to 20, yeah, to fit in there. Let's see what we can do. It appears that all of these should fit in there at some level. And if they're crammed in there, that's fine, as long as I can get in there and water. Now, the couple of things that I want to make sure that I remind you again is that all of these trees still have, a lot of them still have leaves on here. So my Japanese maple has not dropped its leaves yet, but they're dry, they're crumbly. If you pull some of them gently, they fall off. Not a ton, but there we go. And so I'm going to probably go ahead and defoliate these so I don't pull them out and damage where the new growth is going to be next year. We got a little bit on this quince back here, another maple right here, another maple right here, and I got my red twig dogwood, which we'll just get rid of the rest of those, and my cutting from that as well. And the rest are junipers, and the leaves have fallen off. One of the nice things about working on like a Japanese maple in the fall is you can see the structure of the tree. So you notice this one back here, these two have more leaves on them. This one has hardly any. This was a cutting from an air layer. This was the top half of the air layer, I believe. The bottom half is in the other cold frame. And we got this nice curly branched Japanese maple. Got some leaves still on it. And this one's really full. But in order to really see what the design of your tree looks like, you got to see it in the fall. And as I mentioned earlier, when you go ahead and work on these trees in the late fall and cut the leaves off, like I am now, or do some trimming, I should say, you're not going to get any bleeding this time of year. We're not going to have nearly as much water. The sugars and starches have all stored up for the most part into our tree. And so if I made a major cut on this thing right here, we wouldn't see any bleeding. Now I'm cutting these up by the leaf, where the leaf grows out from its stem, just because I know the rest of this will fall off, but I don't want to make any damage where these roots are going to grow. And so first, defoliate the tree, and then I'm going to go ahead and see if I need to make any cuts on this guy before I put him away. And again, safe to cut this time of year. One of the most challenging parts of these Japanese maples is they leaf out so quickly in the spring, we don't want to do any trimming until they harden off that first time, so we don't get as much of that bleeding. So after it hardens off in the spring, then we can go ahead and give it a little cut. Okay, so I might be cutting some of these branches off in the end, but I just want to give myself a view of the tree before I do any cutting. And of course, the reason why I'm getting rid of leaves before I get it in the cold frame, this is a tighter cold frame. I don't have as easy access to it in a way. So I want to make sure that all these leaves aren't falling into the base of the pot, staying here, and we get all this potential for any fungal issues. So there's my tree. Now I can take a look at this tree and say, what do I want to do with this tree? Maybe I want to make a couple of cuts. And I'm not happy with the trunk yet. And as I've learned this year more than anything else, is we want to work on our trees from the bottom up generally. Now I have a lot of trees that could be qualified in the shohin category, but I don't want shohin trees eventually. I want them to grow bigger. This has a long way to go before it has a big trunk. It has some nice movement here. It kind of comes to the left, goes to the right here, and then I got this branch right here as maybe a future first branch. But it's, you know, you're getting it stiff, and I can't wire this one much longer. It's going to be too stiff. But a lot of times we're going to chop a tree right here like I did right here, and we want this to just keep growing now so this all can just thicken up. So I'm going to leave this branch down here. This could be a good primary branch at some point if it continues to grow. And up here, next year we just want this to shoot out and go crazy. I have limited space in my cold frame, so if I just cut all these down and leave a couple of buds that I see that are going to be there for next year, I'm going to be good to go. This one's real thick and gnarly right now, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this one right here. This will die back, and these two will grow, and hopefully this one can become a leader and just shoot up. These will shoot up, this will shoot up, and I can thicken all this down right here. My biggest concern right now with this is a thicker branch, and if this catches up to this will get thick and this won't anymore if this becomes a new leader. I could cut this off right now so I can continue to have this movement to the right here. But for the cold frame storage in this year, I'm happy with that right there. I just cut off a few of these tips here, and we can put this thing in storage. Okay, I'm not going to put it in a final spot yet, but it'll look good right there. And now we have this guy. Now this one's going to take a little bit longer to defoliate here, so I can see what I have for a tree, so we can maybe make a few cuts before I put it into the cold frame. So I'll do that, and I'll be back in just a bit. Okay, I think I'm ready to get this one in the cold frame. So this guy was going to be a father and son thing, father-daughter, father-son, but the branch over here broke off. I bumped it. Yeah, sometimes the decisions are made for you. So this is going to get thicker. I needed to get thicker, but I went ahead and cut back a couple of branches here to just bring it all back a little bit. This now is going to be the main source of this tree, so I can thicken up the trunk, right? You just let your trees grow and grow and grow. Let them grow wild so you can go ahead and get the thickening of the trunk. I don't really have to worry too much about the ramification up here yet because this trunk is not where I want it, right? We want it to get much thicker. So we're going to let it grow. I just made a few trim backs here and here, and left this one kind of alone, so this will be the main source to provide all the energy next year. It'll just grow and grow and grow. It's a pretty nice tree as it is now for a smaller tree. It's bigger than a shohin, but I still want to get much thicker before I worry about too much ramification. So here's another one of my maple. So this maple has a pretty interesting nabari down here. It's very wide. It's broken off a little bit here. It shows that trunk. From this side it's more solid. And so I'll clean that up in the next repot, and so I'm making sure that it's looking a little bit cleaner. And I've got a little bit of movement here, and then I've got this main branch over here, and this one is this one grew really weird in the front, will probably come off at some point. You can see where I made the major chop a few years ago, healing over super nicely, but I'll probably bring it down even more at some point. And it's got a lot of foliage. So, you know, this tree on my benches in my yard looks pretty good all year, and I really like it. So I keep it kind of in this shape just because I like the look of the tree. And it's just going to slowly get bigger, and if I can continue to make some cuts later on and bring these back with some more chops, I'll get more ramification later. But I want this trunk to get thicker too, so I just let it grow out for the most part. And so I'm going to do that next year as well. But we got to go ahead and defoliate this guy so I can see the structure of the tree and see where I make some cuts. Now the other two trees that I defoliated here just moments ago took about 5 to 10 minutes each. More like 5 minutes for the first one and more like 8 to 10 on the second one. This one will probably take me a good solid 10 minutes to do all this. So I'm not going to make you watch all that, but I say that to let you know that if you're ever considering doing a Japanese forest, just consider how much defoliation time just that forest might take if you have 5 to 7 trees in there. But someday, you know what? I still want one, and I'm still going to probably work towards a Japanese maple forest, and I'll worry about that defoliation then. I might regret it after it, but this is still work that I love to do. I love working on my trees. This is always a bit of therapy for me, and so I don't mind all that work. So I'll keep cutting these, and we'll see if we cut this one back before we put it in the cold frame. So this one took me so long that I pulled over a chair and sat down, made myself a little more comfortable. You know, kneeling on this cement when you get older is not as comfortable as it used to be. Not that kneeling on cement is ever comfortable. So there we go. Tree number 3, defoliated. So again, if I ripped these leaves off, I didn't want to damage any of the spots where the new buds are going to be pushing for next year. And so I clipped them all off. Took a little extra time, but now I can see the tree in its beauty. It's nice to see all this ramification on here and what may be down the road. But again, keep in mind, most of this will be gone down the road because we want to thicken up this trunk and get this nice thick nabari here to continue to thicken up here. So I do like how it spreads down here, and then it's got some movement here. I'm starting to lose that green color on the tree down here, and that'll eventually move on up here. And when this thing was chopped right here, I had really nice growth right there. Then this one kind of grew in. I left it on, again, just to keep this all thickening up, knowing that I would cut down below here at some point. I will probably cut at least down to here at some point, so then we start and get some more branches up here to ramify. But we want this tree to get thicker. So we're going to just let it continue to take off. And again, I like this tree in the backyard. I like to look at it, and you have to make a decision at some point is when you're going to make those chops and when you're going to start worrying about ramification and all that kind of stuff. Because yeah, the tree looks nice right now and all the leaves are on there, and I have nice small leaves on this one. And when I prune this one back in the summer with a defoliation, a full defoliation, I get the small leaves, and in the fall it looks really nice. We had a really dry fall in Minnesota, so the leaves in Mother Nature in the ground turn colors much earlier, a week or two earlier than normal. But all the bonsai trees didn't turn early because, of course, I watered them and kept them watered. And they didn't turn as spectacularly this year and late. And then all of a sudden we got this cold, this snow, and so there goes that. So the leaves didn't have a chance to fall to the ground. We don't want to mess up the cold frame, so I defoliated for that reason and to look at the tree. And again, let's make a couple of cuts. So we do have the front of the tree as right here at the moment, and we do have this kind of an eyesore of a branch right there. But again, I'm using most of this to grow the thickness of the trunk, right? So I'm not worried about this being in the way at the moment. We can take this thing off at some point, or if I cut back here, this becomes the new leader. And then it's not so much of an eyesore coming out at us, it'll become the leader of the tree, and then we can have defoliation or ramification from there. But we're just going to cut this thing back because we know it's going to grow like a weed in the spring. Japanese maples grow super hardy and thick and fast, and you can see all these branches have some really nice ramification, which is really lovely, which makes this a pretty tree in the summer and late fall. It's a nice looking tree. But again, this isn't going to be the final design of the tree, so I'm not afraid to cut it back and get more growth. And so if I go ahead and figure out what I'm going to do here, you know, I got some back button back here, I got some buds right here, and I got this split right here. But again, this is going to all grow in the spring. This has a weird junction right here. I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this off right here. I don't want this big thing anymore because this is going to be now this branch, and that can cut right there and then grow and keep thickening the trunk. So up here, we got all kinds of splitting up here. It goes into different directions. We can just go ahead and make these shorter for next year. I can make this one shorter for next year. That'll grow. Got some divisions down there. And it's not going to bleed right this time of year. So actually I'm going to cut this one right there because it's got a couple splits down in here. These will thicken up, grow multiple leaves, and help with ramification. Or help with more leaves to make more growth in the tree and get more sugars and starches pumping up on this tree. This one's thicker back here, so I'm just going to cut this back off here, and this becomes the new leader. And then we can just cut these a little bit shorter for now. Going into the cold frame gives me a little more space in the cold frame, and this is going to just take off and grow next year more. So nothing real stylistic in my pruning right there, just bringing everything back, and this is still the heart of the tree that's going to grow up and thicken all this down here. And then I have these two branches that are also providing some thickness, and I could move this around if I want to, but I'm just not going to worry about it. We're going to grow out the tree and see what happens. Again, just making them a little bit shorter, and they will ramify next year and have all kinds of leaves. And there's my Japanese maple. Now the problem with this is it wastes all this space up here. So these are much shorter than when I first had these in the first couple of years. If I look back at my old videos, I had trees up top touching the top. So I could maybe put a stand in here somewhere. I can also see if this tree will fit up in here, and then I can put more trees and get more bang for my buck with my room. So this one is the shortest, but if I put it up here, look, it's too tall. So I can't put that anywhere but the bottom branch for bottom of my shelf for right now. So he's kind of tall and scraggly. He's a little bit lighter on the leaf structure, so I can bend him in here. I can get these leaves in here, and he's going to go good right back in there. That works on those pieces of wood. That's okay. And I can go ahead and cut some of these branches a little bit here, because they'll grow back in the spring. So I'm fine with that. After monkeying around a little bit, I think I got my cold frame all set up. So again, I got my 4 over here, 4 over here, the 2 that stayed here, and that 1 on the back. The heat's coming right out here. It's going to come this way and up and around. And so I put the cotoneaster back there, and it's a big enough pot that it supported this light plastic pot for one of my Japanese maples. My bigger pot stayed on the bottom, and this one could fit right on top here. So the only thing I have to be careful here is that when I water this tree and water this tree, I don't want to miss any soil underneath here. So I'll have to pull this out and make sure I water really well. Okay. If my trees need some water, which a couple of these were getting a little bit dry, I'm just going to give it a little bit of water right now for demonstration purposes. I can reach all these super easy. The one on the back's always the hardest one. The fuller my water bottle is, the easier it is to spray. Just make sure everything has a little bit of water and moisture as I close this up for the first time for this season. There we go. And then back here, the tough one is the cotoneaster. I'm gonna make sure the water is getting that. That's a bigger nursery pot though with soil in it, so it's going to stay wet a lot longer. But I'll have to make sure I'm checking that. And I have to get all these, and again I have to lift this up. Be careful not to break my tree and get my other Japanese maple. Once that's good and I feel good about it, I can put this back in there carefully. And these are going to be watered. So can't stress enough from this point forward now, for this first week or 2 for sure, I have to come out here and I have to see if this system is working. I can keep my water bottles in here so they stay room temperature for watering purposes. And I've got my wood chunks here in case I ever have to raise some stuff up here. I can protect this tree from the heat a little bit. And we are good to go now to make sure that the cabling is all in here. And this is the guy that has to be hung up before we leave. So I put this back here, and he hangs back here. Now the important thing about the heat, the thermostat regulated heat source right there, is I have to make sure that's away from this heater. Because if it's by the heater and it's warm, it's going to shut off all the time, right? And so it's back in the corner back there, and it'll shut off when this whole system is warm enough. So then I make sure that my cables are in a good spot. I generally put them on this side. And the system is set up and ready to go. All I need to do now is close the doors, and we have a cold frame set up for the year. Okay, we're ready to close the doors. Got to move the stuff out of the way. There we go. And then when this is closed, I typically will add some weight in front of the doors here to keep this closed. So for right now, I can do that. All right. So there you have it. The cold frame is ready for another season. As a quick review, we washed the cold frames out. We disinfected them, and then we made sure that we had leaves off of our branches. We put them on in here. They're up off of the surface of the shelves in here and in the cabin cold frame a little bit so the water can drain off. And we have easy access to this. We can open this up and water. We're going to check these trees regularly throughout the winter, at least every week, and I'll probably have to water every week certain times of the winter, at least some of the trees. So there you have it. Part 2 of the cabin cold frame and the garage cold frame and the storage in the backyard. I hope it warms up a little bit so we can do some more yard work. All right, that's all we got for this one. This was a long one. It was a marathon. Thanks for sticking with me. I'd like to see anything or hear anything on the show. Make sure you let me know, okay? Make sure you put a like down there or something and send your wishes my way and what you'd like to see or any comments or questions. I'd love to read them and I'd love to respond to everybody when they send some notes. So I hope you're all staying well. We got winter to deal with here with the old COVID. I hope everybody is well and able to do some stuff in their lives to keep them relatively sane. Bonsai always does that for me. I hope it does it for you. So until next time, I'm Dave Weiss for Dave's Bonsai, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai.
In the sense that I have a branch that splits into two shoots in here, so I'm probably going to cut this thing off right about here this fall. I've taken my knob cutter and I've gotten rid of some of that. So I just put them on the bottom, growing upwards into the bag.
We fill it up with trees and then we water as we need to.
We try to get rid of those air pockets.